So we basically split it up, of course, into retargeting and prospecting, tested on both.
Teeth falling out. Would that help?
Dude, that's so weird. Mine did it too.
My Google's talking to your Google.
Oh my God. Here we go. Welcome to All Killer, No Filler. We are Pilot House, and this is what worked this week in our agency. Let's talk first about the ad that beat Kim Kardashian on our Snow account. A couple weeks ago, we had Josh F Elizetxe on our podcast, and he went into like a fugue state and just dictated an angle directly like live on the podcast about someone having a dream that their teeth were falling out, and then using a pre-sales page to talk about what that kind of dream means. He basically just dictated this on the podcast. We decided to get it into action on the campaigns that we're running for him, and we have a little update on how that particular angle did. Who wants to update us on how that angle did?
Sounds like a Dave thing.
All right, I'll jump in there. Okay, cool. So this ever had a dream where your teeth were falling out angle. So we basically split it up, of course, into retargeting and prospecting, tested on both.
Teeth falling out. Would that help?
Dude, that's so weird. Mine did it too.
My Google's talking to your Google.
Oh my God. I think we just created Skynet. We just created
Google
Skynet
is listening.
Whoa. Okay, that was weird.
That's weird. Okay. Skynet is live, guys, just so you know. Let's keep updating Snow, and Google hopefully will shut up.
So we had about 5K spend go, or $5,400 spend go through retargeting, 7K through prospecting. It really took off in the retargeting middle of funnel. Prospecting was a little lighter on ROAS, kind of came out about break even, 1 times ROAS. Whereas retargeting middle of funnel, we were seeing a 5.35 times ROAS compared to, you know, some of these other top angles, influencer angles, which kind of, get to that 2 times plus ROAS. So to see almost 5.5 ROAS, middle of funnel, is quite extraordinary. So
It was pretty funny too, because the guys were like, "Hey, we got to do this thing," and I was like, "It's not going to work, but you need to do it because he wants it." And and they launched it, and it worked, and I couldn't believe it. Which just goes to show like what you think you know in this industry, like it's not always the case, and most of the time it isn't. It's just about testing.
You got to test, man. Always be testing.
And it's about having different angles so that when someone sees a brand, they can see different looks at the same brand, different angles. It's like a combination of, when you're boxing.
Yeah,
so you
totally.
Another angle, it can work. So cool. Well, that's a good update. Let's keep it rolling right into the next topic here. Let's talk about Instapage versus product page. This is something we do a lot in our agency. We love to run pre-sale pages, test them against direct to product pages. And we have a good example of something that we did with a men's accessory product this week, and have some really clear data to show why pre-sales pages using Instapage, which is what we use, can be vastly superior to direct to Shopify product pages.
cool. So I'll jump in there again as I got the numbers in front of me here. So men's accessories brand, we traditionally send traffic directly to the PDP, product description page or a collections page, where they kind of check out all the products and then, find something they like and check out. We tested putting a pre-sale page in front where it focuses exclusively on one of the products and goes really deep, showing lots of lifestyle images of that particular product being worn. Getting into the nitty-gritty details on the product itself. And so we've been running this one a little bit longer, so we've got more spend behind it. The traditional product direct to product page had about 55 grand spend behind it, whereas the Insta page now has about 22 grand spend behind it. The ROAS so let's talk traditional real quick. So traditional 7 days was a 1.83 7 days ROAS and a 3.10 14-day ROAS. So, a little bit struggling. We launched the Insta page and started to see a 7-day ROAS of 3.01 and a 14 days of 3.47. So it's a pretty clear lift, especially recently on that Insta page, as we've been constantly making more and more upgrades based on, that sort of Hotjar flow, looking at what people are interacting with. And that's also one of the big advantages of Instapage. I know Shopify does have some functionality, but Instapage really lets you get nitty gritty on split testing, swapping out images, etc.
And it really lets you see that it's interesting that the 14 days ROAS is similar, 3.10 versus 3.47. That's really interesting that it really, because it shows that when you have people there early, the Instapage is going to be better at converting them sort of on the spot and in the short term. It's interesting that it nets out to being closer to even over 14 days. Yeah.
One really important thing here before we jump off this topic is AOV on this particular example. So what we've done with Instapage is we've really sold that one product. Whereas when they go to a collections page or they go to your home site, they can browse around and check out other products and essentially downsell themselves. So when you focus on one product, we found that we're selling more of that product. And so that's pretty key if you're running a big collection.
Nice. And that goes back to what Vin said about keeping it simple and just limiting options for people in order to get the desired action that you want.
Absolutely.
Very cool. All right. Well, then this week we also, I think almost everyone in the Facebook advertising world probably faced the Pixel outage that happened on Wednesday. So that, we sort of, took a look at our campaign, saw that we were not tracking conversions, and what do we do when we feel like something like this happens? What are the actions that we take?
Yeah, I mean, as always, Zuck likes to keep us on our toes, and it's always fun to wake up to like every campaign you have just shitting the bed across the board. So that's what I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday, guys.
Wednesday.
But it's always an interesting time. So I mean, one of the first things we do is check the ad buyers group just to see if everyone else is experiencing the same thing. So obviously that was, and then before we do anything, before you shut off any campaigns, it's super, super, super important to check your back end stats first. Like go into Shopify, go into your CRM, whatever it is, see if you're actually still getting leads. Because in this case, we were still getting leads, we were still getting sales, but the pixel just wasn't firing in Facebook. So, had we turned off, we would have lost out an entire day of sales. So obviously that's bad. Next thing, I mean, what we tend to see sometimes, some accounts, after a major outage like this, they tend to shit the bed. So performance starts lacking. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So in cases like this, one theory we have is that if Facebook isn't getting pixel fires for an entire day, it's not smart enough at this case, in this instance, to say, okay, hold on, I wasn't getting pixel fires, there's an issue, I'll just keep targeting the same audience. I think what we tend to see happen on some accounts is that it doesn't fire pixels. Facebook freaks out, says this audience is no longer converting. I'm going to go find new audiences. So what we almost see is like the day of, it's not as bad as the day after. The day after, you're going to get this pixel hangover where things just are trying to it's trying to figure its shit out, and it's just not working. So what we tend to do in those cases are, we kind of have four options. So one is we kind of just spend through it. So sometimes it might take a day or two. I know we have one account that, it went from netting the advertiser around $3,000 a day to losing $1,000 a day the day after the pixel outage. We've got it back today, and that was just a function of spending through it. The next step is kind of kickstarting with new campaign launches. So just duplicate some campaigns, try and get those going. After that, if you're still not getting it back after a few days, set up a new pixel, try doing that, kind of restart the learnings a little bit. And then finally, if that doesn't work, get a new account going. Always a pain in the ass to get a new account going and even a new pixel. But if you got some big budgets going, you just need to make stuff happen. You gotta roll with it and do it.
I think the trick too is like there's different spend tolerances and thresholds, and people are spending different amounts. And so like some of these strategies, don't apply for some other guys. Like smaller spend, you might just actually want to stop spending for a couple of days, come back on in a couple of days and spend. Because if you're spending $300-400 kind of as a smaller business, some of these strategies don't necessarily work.
One thing that was interesting, the smaller budget campaigns or accounts, like some of them that were spending, $500 to $1,000 a day weren't really that affected, it seemed. But the ones where we're spending, $20 to $50K a day, they really saw some big performance drops for sure, and more of a hangover.
How is the hangover we're feeling right now from the pixel outage? Is it sort of been smoothed over? Or there's still some accounts that are hung?
Some are still struggling for sure. We're just kind of working through the process right now to get them back. Some are totally back on track. Absolutely.
We've on a lot of the e-commerce products, we've actually had to offset the hangover with a lower spend. So just finding that balance of scale and profitability is something that we just kind of had to take on the chin and rework the campaigns to getting back to the scale that we were with a little bit less spend.
I think it's good to be transparent about that. Like we so far have been pretty cavalier, with numbers being really good, but I think it's fair to say that, yeah, when things are not looking great, we're not afraid to dial things back, because we know that we can scale back up when things do improve. I'm really interested. So in the comments, you guys are watching this, let us know your experience with the Pixel outage on Wednesday, and whether or not your accounts are still hungover, or whether you're back swinging on things.
And what you're doing to fix it.
Yeah,
I think that'd be really great to see what the community's doing for sure.
Awesome. We had a really one other thing that we wanted to talk about today about a lot of people are dealing with inventory issues. Advertisers, some different supply chain issues you may be facing. We've done pretty well. I think our advertisers have been more or less pretty sound with things, but we have a couple that are experiencing some scattered inventory availability issues. So what did we do this week to overcome that, Dave?
Hey, Dave, you're muted.
Thank you. Yeah, interesting one. Apparel company where you have this issue of both variations in sizes as well as styles or colors. So typically you have better selling combinations, and those sell out first. And so we, in these past few weeks have been really scaling up, found some winning angles, and then they run out of their core inventory, and you have to face a decision of either, okay, do we stop and wait for the inventory to show up, or get creative. And thankfully between the client and the team, they came up with a really great angle that I think other companies could use. The angle being a surprise me pack, or angle whereby the consumer can potentially get a discount or some kind of other bonus, maybe a free something added to their order, if they are willing to kind of roll the dice and be surprised. And you could potentially lean into it with actually calling out the inventory shortage if you were like, hey, things are selling so fast that we need to do this, or you could kind of keep it more behind the curtain. But either way, as soon as that went back live, we were back in the money in terms of CPAs and volume.
Do you have any insights into like how much did volume drop when we started to have the inventory issues, and how much did we get it up to once we put this new kind of surprise pack in there?
Yeah, so I think it was a pretty sudden drop afterwards, where the ROAS, like, it suddenly became a negative proposition. Like, as soon as customers couldn't buy the products that they were buying before, you're out. And then as soon as that came back on, and then as you on an apparel site, there's the sizes that are squares, right? As soon as your size is grayed out, you're gone.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as that size came back in stock, they were back in business.
Very cool.
It was a definite yo-yo from what I saw.
Yeah, it just goes to show, like, creative thinking. I mean, that's something, not to segue too quickly, but the VESSI podcast that I think Eric's releasing next week or something. But just creative thinking and really trying to figure out how to turn your negative into a positive can have massive, massive positive effects on your business. Eric, you're muted now. We're really good at this.
Well, we'll figure it out on post. We've got Google chiming. At least we have Google chiming in now as well.
Yeah.
So that's really good. There was that one other aspect about that apparel company that I thought was worth mentioning. When we're, and this came up on the CrossNet podcast, is when we're talking about being really aware of who's actually buying your product. And I think it's easy to have perceptions about who's buying your product. But I think I think it's really good to dig into why. Can we talk a little bit about what happened, when we discovered, who was buying this apparel product a little bit?
So we discovered that our target audience wasn't the people that were actually buying. And I think that us and the client, thought it was, 30 to 40 male, fit, city slicker. Turns out through all this and the explosion through the growth and the angles that we tested, we actually changed our audience to, you know, females in the house buying these things for the people in their house or gifting them elsewhere. So just, you know, a bit of a kind of a shock and a bit of a change in our perceptions around how we should be targeting these things and the language and the approach that we take. Now considering that, you know, although our demo is who we still want to buy or wear the product, it's just that it's being purchased by someone else now, which is truly fascinating to me.
Yeah, it allows you to, like, I mean, we're obviously still getting sales from the demo itself, but all of a sudden, if you can, like what Kyle was saying, that almost gives us just more, it allows us to expand our marketing efforts even further than they were before, even wider than they were before. So instead of just targeting, you know, city slicker males, we're targeting city slicker males, their wives, and their moms. So all of a sudden, it's like all these groups.
And again, speaking back to the Instapage versus direct to product page thing, when you run those Instapage angles, you know, you can make that copy speak directly to that, you know, that sub audience or the audience that's actually making the purchase for the end user.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good learning as well.
And we keep talking about Instapage. That's just the tool we've been using for 5 years. You can create pre-sale pages or content pages or product pages in Shopify. There's tools within Shopify you can use it. There's WordPress sites, which I don't recommend. And then there's a dozen different landing page and funnel builders. So I'm sure you've played around with it, but you're not stuck on Instapage for that.
Not to jock them too hard, but why have we selected Instapage? What are the benefits versus some of the apps that you mentioned?
We want to get off. It's super expensive. I'm just going to say that right now. But we've been on it forever. And so we have thousands and thousands and thousands of pages and you know, content, and our team has been built around it. And so we're stuck on it, but there are some other great tools. Instapage is fantastic. It's just super expensive.
Their pages, I mean, for a WYSI, like a full WYSIWYG page builder, their pages are really fucking fast.
Yeah.
That's a good benefit. Okay, cool. And then just to cap off, let's tease the VESSI interview. You know, I met the head of marketing at a mastermind last year. We became friends, and so when we started doing these podcasts, he reached out, got the founder of VESSI waterproof footwear onto the cast. It was just a really amazing one. I'm really excited to release it next week. But we can just tease some of the things, you know, that they're doing there. They basically have leveraged a Giveback program that's based on what everyone's going through right now. You know, where they were actually allowing users to donate basically almost the full margin from the product in order to provide more frontline nurses with protective equipment and some other things as well. And then from this, they experienced a 90% drop in customer acquisition cost, which is just sort of mind blowing.
Eric, I missed that podcast. I wasn't on that one. I haven't seen the video yet.
Yeah.
Like, what is that flow?
Well, I think it's, I think we got to make people watch the podcast, Kyle, to get that flow.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. I think we will.
For this, you know, all killer, no filler. One thing that after the podcast, we went and bought the shoes right away because, of course, you know, we want to support Tony and the brand and everything. One thing I noticed on the post-purchase page, where, you know, a lot of times you get to a thank you, you know, here's some info about your order, it'll show up. I love the idea of leveraging, you know, real estate that isn't currently being used. And they did a really good job of that on that thank you page, where they had a really good refer a friend kind of app where you enter in the email of someone, and had a few other options on how you could share it to give $20 to a friend, and then you receive points yourself. So, you know, props for that, Tony and the VESSI team. And for everybody else, you know, look at those pages that you're running. Are you capitalizing on all that traffic that's going through that page afterwards? Like, that's your hottest audience. How else? Get them to subscribe to a, you know, SMS sequence, email, or, you know, they're already on your email, but how else can you leverage that? Referral is a great one.
Yeah, that podcast is great. There's so much gold in there. Watch it.
And the other thing was that second email they sent, which was you got your order confirmation, but then there's that second email that's just sort of about hyping up the product a little bit, showing you an image of how you might using it. You know, you might use it walking your dog, or showing the fact that it was waterproof with the caption, "This is going to be fun," kind of idea that you're sort of embarking, you know, on a new mission here. I thought that was a really clever second email to send, with just that like really nice sentiment of now you're part of something new.
get all this and more at our next podcast.
Exactly. Nice. Well, thanks for dropping by today, guys. We'll catch up later, and everyone out there, keep it all killer, no filler, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks,
Ciao.
Eric. Thanks,
Bye.
guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.